Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the important factions, forces, and faces of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we are to take a brief look at one of the most complicated figures in the setting. Of course, I speak of none other than the First Daemon Prince, Be'lakor. As we are about to find out, Be'lakor is not an overtly complicated character unto himself, but it is in the nuances of his history, his existence in not only the grim darkness of the far future, but also the world that was, and then the age of Sigmar, that brings about the head-pounding possibilities. But before we get onto these details and getting to know him, a brief word from the sponsor of this video. I shall be brief, 80 seconds. Here goes. Raid Shadow Legends, where you too can be a legend. It's a great game, that's all that matters. Wait a minute. Oh, what's that? Techno stuff that if you can scan, it leads you to the game. Excellent. It's like being on a console, but in the palm of your hand. Or on a PC or a console. Most things really. Not a comb, but I've not needed one of those in decades. Still free to play. Not him again. And it's 2 now. Would you believe it? All this in just 2 years. Starting off smaller than a squig, it's now a mighty squig-off. It has dominated the gaming world and is #1 in the USA for 2020. Over 1 million players, over 2 billion battles, and a massive community. Okay, and singing, even about Raid, but if I could, I would, because it's worthy of song. And the festivities are aplenty, with special anniversary events and tournaments with amazing prizes and ice cream not included. The first ever Clan vs Clan tournaments, and the release of the Shadow King faction, and more action at the Doom Tower. If you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you have to do is hit the link in the description, or scan my QR code, and you'll get your free epic champion, Jotun, a big lad as the ladies say, 100k silver, 50 gems, and 3 ancient shards, so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in-game. All this treasure will be waiting for you here, or scan the thingy, yes the thingy. You've only got 30 days to do so get your skates on. Raid Shadow Legends, start your legend today. And with that done, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Be'lakor, the Dark Master. Be'lakor was the first mortal bestowed with Daemon Princehood, though what sacrifices he made and what horrors he inflicted to secure such a reward are not described in even the oldest of tales. What is known is that Be'lakor somehow managed to draw the gaze of all 4 of the Dark Gods, pleasing them sufficiently that each granted him a portion of their godly might. This soon was shown to be a dire mistake. The Chaos Gods seldom share anything for long, and so it was with Be'lakor. For a time, the gods fought over the winged Daemon Prince, feuding as children might squabble over a favored toy. However, they soon realized the folly of combining their might into a single vessel, as Be'lakor was nearly uncontrollable. It was not long before the ruinous powers began to raise up new demon princes, each god choosing only champions that would be loyal to them and them alone. Although Be'lakor remained the strongest of the demon princes, his might was diminished as the gods spread their power amongst their other servants. Nevertheless, Be'lakor remains a master of shadows, moving behind the veil of history and exerting the will of the Chaos Gods upon the universe. The origins of Be'lakor are spoken of only as myth and rumor, tales torn from the tongues of captive demons, or forbidden lore recorded on ancient crypt walls, crude pictographs found in the caves of dry, dead worlds, or primitive statues hidden in the sunken depths of Deathworld oceans speak to Be'lakor's immortal reign within the galaxy. Scholars have been driven mad, looking for hints of the demon's presence woven into the history of the universe, always lurking in the shadows behind the rise and expansion of the mortal races. Even the secretive Grey Knight Space Marine chapter, created by the Emperor to combat the demonic forces of the Warp, know little of Be'lakor's true history, only conflicting lies and impossible fabrications. Legends tell of Be'lakor ruling over mortal empires since the dawn of time. The Demon Prince conquering a world and subjugating its people, forcing them to worship him as a god during the time men know as Old Night or the Age of Strife. When a race would fall into decline, ruined by Be'lakor's greed and malevolence, the demon would move on, finding a new burgeoning race to be his playthings. Several times, the Demon Prince is said to have been the lord of sector-spanning empires, a dark demonic god ruling over 1,000 worlds and billions of loyal followers. Relics and ruins of dead worlds still exist that suggest that there may be some truth to these legends. Whether their source was Be'lakor or not is more difficult to say. Like a petulant firstborn son, Be'lakor has always had a bitter jealousy towards anything or anyone that wins the favor of the Dark Gods. For millennia, the Demon Prince undermined the plots and schemes of the demonic and mortal servants of chaos. However, what Be'lakor mistook for free will and a measure of revenge against those who have usurped his power was merely the great game between the Chaos Gods. When the demon brought down a champion of Nurgle, invariably he was doing Tzeentch's bidding, and while laying a warrior of the blood god low, he was fulfilling the will of Slaanesh. Be'lakor remains blind to these manipulations of the gods, or perhaps chooses to ignore them. His own thirst for power and the pleasure of proving his mastery over rival champions of chaos seems enough to make him forget the sorcerous tethers the gods continually try and wind tightly around his neck. Hidden behind a veil of secrets and lies, it is impossible to know for sure if Be'lakor is doing the bidding of the Chaos Gods or simply working towards his own profits and power and souls. In battle, Be'lakor strikes with his mighty claws and wields the Blade of Shadows, a massive sword that shifts in and out of focus, slipping from shape to shadow. As the weapon blinks between solidity and mere silhouette, it slices through armor, scale, flesh, or ferrocrete with ease. Whether the blade is a part of the demon itself, or perhaps an ancient gift bestowed upon him by the Dark Gods that Be'lakor somehow retained in spite of his fall from favor, none can truly say. An opportunist, Be'lakor has been sighted fighting alongside the demon legions of each of the gods since the opening of the Great Rift. He has pledged aid to several renegade chapters, even fighting in the company of Abaddon the Despoiler and his Black Legion. But like so much about the shadowy Demon Prince, exactly what his winding plot seeks to achieve is unknown. End quote. Be'lakor, the first Demon Prince. Now, the actual nature of Demon Princes I hope to engage in very soon, but for the time being, let us be brief. He is a living extension of the Dark Gods who lent him power. As I will explain in more detail, you should not really see it as the being who was Be'lakor simply leveling up. No, this is simply not the case. From my exploration and perspective of the lore, when one becomes a Demon Prince, one does not simply become augmented, engorged with the power of chaos, so to put it. This may well be true of some situations, but not of apotheosis into a Demon Prince. It means that realistically, the mortal who ascends is subsumed into the very soul of the Chaos God or gods that they serve. They merge with them in an almost Buddhist way, so that they become one, but the greater will, that of the Dark God, always wins out. Then, like other Neverborn, the being that is a Demon Prince is merely a small part of the God cut from itself, and given the semblance of free will and agency. But they do not have this. They are forever linked, really being one with the God that they serve. And thrice woe to the being that serves the Dark Gods of Chaos undivided, as Be'lakor does, for it means that any of the 4 Dark Gods can slip their sentience into him at any time, and affect all that he does. And this is a sad life indeed. For Be'lakor is on the one hand the most powerful mortal to have lived, apart from perhaps, just perhaps, the master of mankind. But on the other hand, he is also the most pathetic of things, a slave to darkness, a sock puppet that any of them can choose to fill with their own agency, their own agenda, at any time. He is nothing and everything at the exact same moment. All that matters is perspective. But Be'lakor's history is complicated by the fact that he exists in all of the games of Warhammer, all of its multiverses so far. For he was the first ever chosen of the world that was, the old fantasy setting of Warhammer that is now regaining popularity through the excellent game Warhammer Total War. Although derivative, it was a much-loved setting, I digress. But he has now been seen in not only the grim darkness of the far future, 40k, but also in the realms that the God King Sigmar is attempting to hold against a new wave of chaos. As I have stated before, the Chaos Realms are all intrinsically linked. One can pass from one region, one time, existence, to another. For all realms in the multiverse are connected by the forces of chaos, and it is stated by many that creation can only come from the primordial power of chaos. So no chaos, no universe. But I believe he is the opposite of the dark gods. In my entry on Grandfather Nurgle, I postulated that the genesis of the dark gods may have been in that dark future, in 40k. For when one of them, any of them, gained sentience in the warp, they instantly became existent in all periods touched by the warp. As the immaterium, the warp is outside of the rules of time and space. So if something exists in the warp, it can exist any when as well as anywhere via it. But with Be'lakor, I believe that he originated in the world that was, and has then crept through the many alleys and pathways of the warp, until he now has the routes to and fro between the many worlds and times. Thus it is that this scion of evil, this ultimate catspaw who has too many masters, is dragged from one goal to another across all of the realms. As the quote stated, it remains to be seen if he is merely this, a catspaw, or as somehow the First Daemon Prince, by dint of his power and experience, is forging his own path entirely. And what are his plans for both Archaon and Abaddon the Spoiler? Only time will tell. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to Be'lakor. If so, then please do consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.